So I think I'm going to mix a few themes again today, and some things that came up in conversation this week. One being, do you want to be healed? Do you want to heal, or do you want to be fixed? And this ties into really taking ownership for our experience, our emotions, and coming into, I talked about this a long time ago, but really coming into ourselves as kind of like spiritual adults, rather than functioning from what our society has kind of bred for a long time of kind of keeping us like children that are looking to authority. And in that dynamic, it's very easy to point the finger of blame, but it's also really easy to look for an external savior. And what happens when we take ownership? What happens when we really engage with our own process of healing versus the expectation, the false expectation, I'll say, of being fixed by someone else? I don't even like that word, but I'll get into what that means. And then what happens when we take ownership and when we drop more into a very different part of our being? We drop into our heart, we drop into our body, we drop into the language of our emotions, our unique language of our emotions. We come more into the intuitive space, and then how life unfolds with greater flow, with greater ease, with much more synchronicity and serendipity. So it's this is what I mean. There's a lot of topics that can be thrown together, but because life is never linear, right? It's not just one point, it's holistic, it's cyclical, it's circular. So these are the various threads that we're going to dive into today. This is Corinne Bloom, and you're listening to Raw Conversations. So if you know my work, you know that I don't like words like broken and fixed and right and wrong and good and bad. But this kind of came up as a theme actually from more than one person. And I always find it so fascinating when themes come up. It comes from like various different sources, you could say. But a friend of mine was bringing this up, and I found it so true, so poignant, because this idea of, do you really want to heal? But healing doesn't necessarily, see, like the word fix to me, the reason why I don't like the word fix is because it implies that something is broken. And then what comes with that is, I need someone to fix me. I want to get rid of this part of me, and I want to fix this problem, and I'm expecting you to do it. Right? Now, of course, as a guide, as a coach, as a counselor, as a therapist, if you're going to see someone, you're looking for help, right? But no one can fix us, because firstly, we're not broken, but also no one can do it for us. People can guide us. They can help us to see ourselves better. They can be the mirror, the reflection. They can help connect dots. They can help us understand our psychology and our being and how we feel, and to, feel our feelings and understand our feeling, all of these, but it's guidance. If the perspective is, I'm coming here and you're going to fix me and make me better, and you're just going to sit back on the couch and do nothing, that's an extreme perspective, but I've had some people like that walk into my practice. And I know it's not going to work, because the thing is that nobody can actually change us, and we can't change anyone unless they want to change and grow and evolve. And unless we want to grow, heal, and evolve, right? There's not, the problem is that we have this psychology of the pill society, the instant coffee society. Oh, you have a problem, take this pill. You have, this issue, or everything needs to be instant, and it's always focusing on the symptom rather than the core. And when that bleeds into the way that we perceive our humanity and our experience, it can be really detrimental, because one is really setting themselves up for kind of disappointment, because it's a huge expectation and it's unrealistic, right? And also, that's not the process. I was having a conversation today with some friends, which was really beautiful, talking about like the arc of life, which I've shared before, that I really believe that we come into this human form, and the wound is what really brings us into our humanity, and we forget who we truly are. And through the quagmire of our our struggle and our suffering and our fears and our, emotional world and all of these things, we have this arc and this journey. It really is a journey where we learn about who we are and we discover who we are. And we learn that, even when we're pushed up against the parts that we don't like, that when we can actually embrace them and let go of judgment. We were talking a lot about judgment today, that I really believe the world isn't going to really truly change until we let go of judgment. But we've got to stop judging ourselves, right? And so when we can even embrace the judgment, when we can even love the judgment, the fear, the anxieties you've heard me talk about many, many times over, that what happens on the other side of that, that's actually the true healing, because healing is holistic, and holistic means everything. You have to include everything. There are no fragmented pieces. There is no separation. It means look at the whole, not at just the part. Now, when I'm working with people, we do look at the parts, but it's all to understand how to bring all those various parts into harmony and into cohesion with one another, so that we can feel whole again. Because as I've shared before, we are whole. We just forget, we fragment, we compartmentalize, we hide, oppress. We push parts of ourselves down in a way. But the psychology is really important. So I pay a lot of attention to words. What kind of words are you using? If you're trying to get rid of something, if you're trying to fix something, if you see it as a problem, you're creating, of course, unconsciously, it's not like you're purposefully doing this to yourself, but you're creating unnecessary suffering. Because the path to liberation really, at least from where I'm standing, can only really come through acceptance, like true acceptance, and then understanding and embodying what love is. So the first question is a fundamental one. Do I want to heal or do I want to be fixed? And if your answer is, I want someone to fix me, which fair enough, that would be great, right? But I would really encourage and invite you to look at that and to change your language and to change your perspective. Because one, you're going to create the unnecessary judgment on yourself that you are a problem that needs fixing, or that you're broken and you need fixing. And then the unnecessary expectation of whoever you're working with that they need to fix you. And if they don't do that, then they're a shitty therapist. And actually it leaves you disempowered, because people can, sometimes I mentor people more than, I don't like the word coach, but guide. Sometimes I can go more into a mentoring role with certain people that I work with. But even then, it's still to reveal their own wisdom, their own inner knowing and knowledge and intuition, and just to connect these parts that maybe they can't see yet. It's all inside of them, but they can't see it. They can't feel yet. There's a stripping away of all of the things that keep us from our own inner knowing, our wisdom, our intuition, and our worth, which has always been there. So there's a peeling back, having to go in via peeling back and then being able to come back out, really is the person that we've always truly, truly been. So ask yourself that question. And then if you want to shift to okay, I want to heal, that is a process that requires your full engagement. It requires you taking ownership. You, us, we. Semantics here. All of us. I include myself in this, of course. It requires taking ownership. It requires taking loving self-responsibility. It requires coming out of victim mentality or spiritual child mentality of somebody else is going to make it better for me. Somebody else is going to save me. But I'm also going to point the finger of blame if they don't do that for me. And it keeps us in a very disempowered position, right? Taking ownership isn't about berating ourselves. That's not ownership. That's not responsibility. We can sometimes have a bad connotation with what is the word responsibility, but actually it's a beautiful act of being an adult, and being in our maturity. And I've always quite liked being an adult. A lot of people don't like being an adult because of what society, the connotation that society has. Oh, adults, you have to pay taxes and pay bills and do shit that you don't like to do and go to work. But I'm talking about from a embodied, cyclical, rite of passage, natural growth and evolution to embody the woman or the man that you are and really be an adult, not walking around. Of course, we always have our inner child, and our inner child needs time to play and express itself. And we have, especially as women, we move through 4 different archetypes every single month and through the course of our lives. So we have all of these things, but actually there's just the beautiful maturization. Somehow that doesn't sound right. Of growth, right? And I think a lot of when we're doing this work and we're shifting paradigms is redefining these words. You know, I talk a lot about this with clients. Redefine what a man and a woman is, redefine what love is, redefine what relationship is, redefine what vulnerability is, redefine what emotions are, and specific emotions. As I've shared before, in the spiritual community or the self-development community, there's a lot of blame and shame and like, oh no, that's not spiritual if you feel anger. This actually came up in conversation today as well with my friends. It's like, anger has a message, you know, and all of it is alerting us to something that's deeper. And sometimes that thing that arises, whether it's the emotion or the illness or the injury or whatever the point of conflict is, that is the doorway, that is the portal, that is the way. It's like, who said it, that the obstacle is the way? I really believe that. And so I've shared recently how, you know, I truly believe that the future, I went to this amazing, just exquisite concert on Saturday night, an artist called Alex Sarah. And it was the most just beautiful, love-filled, authentic, soulful, genuine concert I've ever been to. You know, the artists just smiling at each other and just sheer joy, in just sheer love for one another, and the whole, you know, the crowd there picking up that same energy, just so much like unison and unity, and everybody really genuinely smiling at each other and like being like arm in arm and dancing together. And it was, you know, this beautiful setting, and it was so gorgeous, and it really gave me like true, not just hope and not even just faith, but like a knowing, a deep knowing that this is humanity in our true essence. You watch the news, which I haven't done in 20 years, but you watch the news and they're going to show you how terrible humanity is. You know, they're going to show you all of the terrible things, and you're going to believe that story. If that's what you're ingesting, it's like, you know, eating McDonald's every day. You're going to ingest crap for your consciousness, and you're going to start to take on the beliefs that humanity is terrible, but actually humanity in our essence is so beautiful. And when we're connected to our heart and into love, which is the essence of who we are, it is who we are. We're incredibly beautiful beings. And it reminds me of, I forget now who said it. I can picture his face, but I can't remember his name. But he was saying that fear is the absence of love. You know, fear arises in the absence of love. And when we bring love even to fear turns into love, because that's the base ingredient for everything. But what I wanted to say is that I have an absolute knowing beyond hope and faith. But what this concert really tapped me into was I have an absolute knowing that can be our future, that it can be blissful and joyful and so full of love. And I also truly believe that we can only get there by facing our shadow, by confronting our judgment. Because our judgment is what kind of keeps us, you know, it's a barrier that keeps us from actually sinking into the deeper parts of us. It's kind of like the guard at the wall, you know, before getting to our shadow. And shame is also kind of there, right? There's judgment and then there's shame. And because, again, you've been told to, like, your emotions are bad, your humanity is bad, when actually all of these things make being human very interesting from the perspective of consciousness. It's complex, it's textured, it's rich, it's multi-layered, and it's a huge catalyst for growth. And that's what we're here to do. There are no marks, there are no grades, there's no exam, there's no praise or punishment. But what are we wanting to learn? And so these things, like if we look at all of our challenges and our hardships as learning opportunities, then they take on a totally different perspective. And when we get out of victim role of this is happening to me and stepping into this is happening for me. And again, if I switch the perspective and mentality of this is breaking me, it's making me broken, something's wrong with me, and therefore I need to seek out someone to fix me, versus this is happening for me, what am I learning? I might need guidance for it, but how do I heal this? How do I alchemize this? How do I transform this? And through that journey, I evolve. We evolve, you evolve. And then that's beautiful. And I was talking about it this morning saying, and then you go through all of this stuff. And sometimes when you're in it, you're like, this sucks. But when you come out through the other side and you have these kind of conversations with people that have like their stories and their hardships and their pain and their suffering and their loss. But then where it comes to in the realization and the awakening and that aha moment of figuring out who you really are and coming into that place of acceptance because you've let the judgment melt, or of course, it's going to keep on coming up to a certain degree because we're human, so we're going to get triggered. But when you can face it and be with it and show up with love, and all of a sudden, everything that we would deem as like hard and difficult and painful and brutal and ugly and challenging and like shitty and sucky and all of these things, in the end, you go, wow, it's damn beautiful. It is beautiful. And when life is beautiful, it is so beautiful. And when you tap into those states of just genuine bliss and joy, it feels like the greatest high that you've ever experienced. It really is bliss. It really is heaven on earth. And I feel utterly grateful that I'm riding this wave right now of just bliss. And if you've been following me these months, you've heard when I've been down in the gutter. You've heard when I've really had a hard time, and I've shared that, and I've felt despair, and I've felt like, what the fuck, and where am I going, and what am I doing, and I feel dropped, and I feel like I'm running into walls, and you've heard me go through that. And, when I reflect back, I go, I stayed with it. And then, as I was talking about in the intro, that when we start to stop judging our experience, and start trusting a little bit more, even if it's especially if it's a total unseen and an unknown. And really staying with whatever is up for us without the judgment, without the shame, without fixing it, but just being with it and staying with it and allowing it to just have its own space to breathe. Then what I'm really finding is that that's when you can come into flow. It's when you stop trying. It's when you stop fixing. It's when you stop expecting. It's when you stop forcing. It reminds me of the saying, how do you make God laugh? You tell him your plans. It's like when you let go of all of those things and everything that society has kind of told you should do. You should have your ducks in a row. You should be doing something. You should be achieving. You should be successful. It should be on a big scale. You should be famous. You should have this, all of that bullshit, right? So it's really, those are part of the layers of letting go of who we think we should be, by whose opinion, right? And then when you do that and you're so much more forgiving and patient with yourself and present with yourself when you are going through the hard times, you realize that you move through it because you're not holding on. And so you're not kind of having these things fester within you. You're keeping things in movement, not by doing, but by being. Being is actually like stillness in motion is what I like to call it. It actually has a lot of movement, but it's not like a frenetic movement of I have to get this done, or else I'm not good enough, or else I'm not worthy enough. And then when you move into that space more, at least for me, what I find is I drop more into my body. I drop more into my heart. My intuition comes online a little bit more. And right now the veil is thin. So it's a good time to be doing this work because it is very thin. I'm having so many psychic moments and I'm having so much synchronicity, so much serendipity. I mean, it's like magical. I'm like laughing. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And life becomes really beautiful again. It becomes really magical again. And I think we have this invitation right now that can be more of our reality. And we're letting go of an old, whatever you want to call it, the old matrix, the old paradigm of life has to be hard and, you have to suffer and it has to be a struggle and everything is terrible. And like, yes, that still exists. But the only way that we can shift that is by dropping into our heart. It really is, because this is a shift in consciousness. You know, what you can physically do right now is little, right? What you can do energetically is massive. And once that tipping point has been reached, it will just be unstoppable, an unstoppable momentum. But, you know, as within, so without. So always start with the micro, start with your experience and learn for yourself. Learn, feel what that feels like. Okay, what happens when I let go of these concepts of I'm broken and I need to be fixed, and I come into more ownership of my entire state of being, and my healing naturally occurs by my presence with and for myself in a loving, compassionate, patient, forgiving way, gentle, understanding. And how that shifts the very makeup of who you are and how you perceive yourself and life. And then you come into a greater state of flow, a greater state of connectivity with yourself, with other people, with source, creator. And then the magic gets to play out, you know, and then it's a whole like playground of what you want to open up to, you know, depending on your belief systems. And I can really say it feels incredibly magical and miraculous. And in a way, that's the beautiful part of kind of returning to the essence that we had as children, right? Before the innocence was lost, before the wound came in, and before that journey of the arc of being human and the arc of life began, really. And at the same time, to embody that in adult form as a mature adult that knows how to take ownership and self-responsibility. It's divine. It's really exquisite. It's really, really beautiful, because now you have a full meal. You know, you don't just have the appetizer, you don't just have the dessert, you have the full meal. It's the holistic, you know, all parts of it, all the parts that you need. So, you know, what do I come back to? Inclusion. Include all of yourself. Stop seeing yourself as something that is broken and not whole. You're not a project. You don't need to be fixed. Don't believe that anyone is going to fix you. You know, if you need a guide, absolutely find a guide that resonates with you, because we're also here to help one another, you know, and that's really important. That's a whole learning, as well as, can I receive? Can you receive? Can you receive love? Can you receive support? And, you know, some personality types, it's a lot harder. And given what your life was like, that's a lot harder. It's vulnerable, but it's beautiful. And I think now more than ever, we're recognizing interconnectivity and how important that is. And just in these last weeks, really feeling what community does, really feeling what, and by community, I don't mean commune. I just mean when people come together and they have a shared intention, and it's based in love and heart. And you're just walking around and seeing all of these people just smiling. I mean, a lot of people that live in cities, my God, they just see grumpy faces that are looking down at the cement all day, right? With their ear pods in. We got to remember to look up. We got to remember to look at each other. We got to remember how powerful smiling is. You know, I think I've been doing the bliss technique, and I have to say, try it. It's really wonderful. It's really, really wonderful. So simple. You know, you can even just do it for a couple minutes every morning, and it really changes your frequency and your mood. And again, it doesn't have to be I don't believe in that spiritual, like, I'm going to transcend this feeling and I'm going to be all zen and I'm not going to be angry. No, sit with what is here. Be with what is here. It deserves your attention. It deserves your love. It deserves to exist. But listen to it, pay attention to it, and then I guarantee you it will shift very effortlessly. You know, sometimes it can be, you know, a bit niggly, especially if it's from deep older stuff that you've been neglecting for a long time. But once you have that practice more and more, it moves through us much quicker. So inclusion include all parts of yourself. Shift your perspective to one, like, how would you want to be treated by a parent, by a partner, by your best friend, and become that person for yourself. As I shared so many times, it's really simple. It's not always easy because we've been habituated to be in a pattern of being really mean to ourselves, you know? and start to look at the things that happen in your life as, how is this happening for me? And then, ask for help, ask for unseen help, ask for seen help, ask for guidance, be open to it. You have to give permission to receive it. Nobody can change you. Nobody can guide you without your permission. Connect to nature, because nature is such a powerful way of bringing us back into our own inner nature, because we are one and the same. And begin to be open to synchronicities. Begin to, our society is really good at like forgetting magic. It hands us over this Disney bullshit, which is like complete nonsense. Excuse me if you love Disney, I'm sorry, but I think it's really actually manipulative and very just complete nonsense. And I think it is done, I work a lot around relationship, and this whole happily ever after and all of this stuff is actually psychologically so detrimental. It's very disempowering. It's very kind of victim-y and keeps us small and keeps us in an unrealistic fantasy. And then when the reality hits, we think something's wrong, right? Because the example isn't true. It's not realistic. It's not what love is. It's not what romance is even. So, we're having to kind of go back to our real roots in many ways. And we don't always have the best examples for it, but I do trust that your greatest guide is your heart, And if you're one of those people that will say, which I've heard before, well, but I've never been loved unconditionally, or I've never really felt love, or I don't know what self-worth feels like. And, I get that on a 3D level and from relationally, yes, that might be very true. That might be a part of your story. But if you know that something is missing, you have to know what it is. So trust that your innate being knows. It knows what love is, because it is who and what you are. So the invitation for today is just to start looking at the way you perceive things, yourself most especially. Redefine things. Take a moment and sit down and redefine things and sit with that. Notice how you relate to yourself. Notice how are you when it comes to judgment. Do you include parts? Do you push away parts? And what happens, notice the difference. What happens when you start to bring things into inclusion, into that embrace and into that lap of love. And notice how your body can begin to relax. Your being can begin to relax. Don't judge any experience as good, bad, right, wrong. It just is what it is. It's working for you. Listen to it. Breathe into it. Allow it. Give it the permission. Embrace it. Love it. And then when you feel that flow with yourself, keep on dropping into your heart. Keep on dropping into your heart. Keep on dropping into love. Gratitude is an amazing practice, as I spoke about last week, but not a false forced gratitude, but a genuine gratitude that comes when you feel relaxed because you've included all parts. And then watch how the magic unfolds. But don't get attached. Don't cling on to any one state of being. Just breathe through it all. But we're in a moment where that is so accessible. So take it. Take the opportunity. Take it and fly with it, because there's a momentum of a collective energy that is moving in that direction. There's still the collective energy of fear. There's still the collective energy of hatred, but hatred will not cease by hatred, right? So be love, but begin with yourself. Always, always begin with yourself. So, all right, I'm going to get off my soapbox. As always, take it or leave it as feels right for you, and loving you from afar. You've been listening to Raw Conversations with Corinne Bloom. Thanks so much for showing up, listening in, and being a part of the conversation with me.